Hello, everyone. I'm Shruti Kumthekar, Marketing Manager at Cloves. Thank you for joining us in our monthly webinar. Today, we will be discussing reporting in ServiceNow. Our agenda, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to go through housekeeping, talk about Cloves, followed by a presentation on the reporting, and finally Q&A. This webinar will be recorded, so if you happen to miss something, no worries, you will be able to access it later. As I mentioned, the Q&A session is towards the end of the webinar and you're on mute. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section in your Zoom control panel and I will read them out for our panelists. If you have any questions that are not directly related to the webinar, please email me at shruti@closing.com or sales@closing.com. Our social media channels are listed here, and you can also access our previous webinars at our Cloves YouTube channel. A little about Cloves. We have been a ServiceNow partner since 2011. We are based out of Santa Clara, very close to the ServiceNow headquarters. We are a full ServiceNow shop with 150 plus customers and close to 50 consultants executing projects globally. We provide end-to-end services, and our focus recently has been on customer service management, end-user portals, and mostly HR. Our panelist today is Darla Wolf, ServiceNow technical consultant at Cloves. Darla, looking forward to knowing more about the reporting capabilities. I'm now going to stop doing my screen share and pass control to you.
Thank you, Shruti. Thanks everybody for attending this webinar and carving out 1 hour of your Friday with us. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So on today's webinar, we're going to be talking about creating useful reports, data sources versus tables, sharing the report designer, which has been introduced a few versions ago, and some new Kingston features or the latest release on the ServiceNow platform. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into our webinar right now. And this is our agenda. I'm going to touch on reporting. I'll be doing a live demo using my instance. And after I've gone through the new things and some not so new in the reporting application in ServiceNow, I'm going to cover what's new in Kingston, some advices in best practices, as well as some reference material at the end of this slide. And just as knowledge for the team, the version I'm using in my instance is Kingston, which is the latest release. So some of the features and functionalities that you're going to see may or may not be visible in your own personal instances when you get back into your instance today. All right. So for security, I want to talk about, before I actually dive into the reports module, I wanted to take time to talk about the security. So we understand that in ServiceNow, data is pulled from tables, and these tables actually have fields in it. So if you have touched any of the access control lists in your tables and fields, those things are still going to be respected in the report. And just briefly, if you're not familiar where that is, if you go into ACL, and there's actually a lot of material in the community, in docs that ServiceNow has provided around ACL. And this is the table that controls what a user or what a role can see or not see in each table. So if we go into the incident, for example, this tells you if you can read the actual table, if you can write on certain areas, and you can actually even go to the next level and say you shouldn't be able to write a report or create a report out of this table. So in terms of security, if you want to tighten some of your tables because they're not, for example, a scope application, you want to even control who can or cannot create a report out of a table, you could definitely do that with access control lists. Also in reports, you can assign roles for visibility. So as administrators, you have the capability to go into under reports, administration, and then all, This will allow you to see all the reports that you currently have in your platform. And in my case, even though I haven't built a lot of reports, ServiceNow has provided us a lot of useful reports. I have 722 in my instance. Well, I can actually inform or any type of report that is, for example, available globally, I can still associate a role who can see that report. So there are just some factors that kind of help us build a much more robust and secure reporting, besides, just not giving them access to reports, right? There's no need to give them or be that desperate when it comes to reports. All right, so what we'll cover next is the report builder versus the report designer. So the report builder is actually from the get-go the old version of creating a report. So when you create a new report, when you click create new in new report, you're going to probably notice switch to classic UI if you are coming from a new, like in my case instance, Kingston. But if you are upgrading from older versions, you're going to see this type of view. It doesn't mean that you cannot take advantage of the new version. I just want to point out the advantages and disadvantages of using whichever view. And in this classic view that we have here, you can still create as much reports as you can. The challenge that you have here is pretty much if you use report sources, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. If you use report sources, you can't really leverage that in your form also, or in your report. Another thing that can be a bit challenging is if you want to be able to guide a user who is not too familiar with the structure of ServiceNow, the new report designer will allow them to look and create the reports at ease. So it's going to be easier for them because it's a step-by-step, there's a guided flow, it's user-friendly, and this particular type of feature is also available. I believe it's been made available even in Istanbul. So Jakarta definitely has this already. This new UI view that I'm talking about. So if you have not taken advantage of it, you definitely want to do that. One of the things that I was mentioning earlier, table source versus report source. So it's been common. I've created so many reports in my time as a customer, as a consultant. And one of my challenges was really, I wish there was a way for me to be able to build a standard kind of like report that people can just reuse over and over so that they don't have to always start from scratch when they're building their condition. And that's where the data source section comes into play, okay? And I'm gonna cover this, I'm gonna create one actually right away. So in here, the difference between a data source and a table source is, with data source, you can create a starting point for a user as a point of reference. For example, you already know that it's common for your employees to always ask for active incidents that is grouped by priority per assignment group. If that is a common ask, it's always active incidents, then you can definitely expect that that's something that you can create a report source on if it's not yet in, for example, in the report source table. So before we get into building here, I'm going to point out where it is. So here is the report source. A lot of it is provided already by ServiceNow, which is great. You're going to see here, I believe these tables will be familiar to the team: change request, incidents, knowledge. We have also, I have a couple of plugins turned on in my instance, but problem is another thing that is common. Let's look at one and see what it's about. So incidents .open. So in this report source, it's even got a description, thank you ServiceNow, where it says incidents where active is true. So this is a base condition where what this report source is about is if an employee uses this to build a report, it will always start off with a condition active is true. So with that being said, you can actually, if it's a common thing for the team to have that similar situation, so for example, HR, if you have HR using ServiceNow, and it's not, it may be a bit challenging for them to make reports from the get-go as they're learning to use the platform, then you can start building them this report source. And from there, you can just tell them every time you create a new report, if you want to make sure it's all only active, then go ahead and use this specific report source. So let's go ahead and create create one. So in this report, I'm going to want to create an incident priority report. And the reason why I'm picking this is ServiceNow has provided us a way in order for us to be mindful, or before we even do the actual work, it helps us by enlightening us to see what's already out there. So I am going to pick the data source that we have there, which is incident.open. So as I pick this, if you notice down here or up here, there is a information where it says the report you want to create may already exist. To view the 15 reports that already use this data source, click here. So before, if you're using this new version or this new UI, it helps you. This is another difference between the classic and the new. It helps you identify, maybe before you build that, why don't you go ahead and check here first to see if anything that you have is already available, if that report is already available. And the user can go ahead and review it, see what type of reports there are that is already available. And if they're not finding what they need, then they can go ahead and say, yeah, I still need it. So they can go ahead and just ignore that message and then create an additional condition. So from here, I can go ahead and either click this button to run report but not save it to see how it looks like. I can click here in order to run it also and save it. Down here at the bottom, let me move my screen a little bit. Down here at the bottom, you're going to see there's a next, and it gives you a good visual indicator of what types of available report presentations that ServiceNow has to offer. So in here, well, I can do a bar chart, I can do histogram. So there's a lot of options that we can actually leverage in here, which is awesome because, for example, if your manager needs to go deep dive and they love pivot reports, then you can go ahead and create them this kind of report. So for now, I'll simplify it. I'll make a bar chart and then click next. If I want it to group by active, that's what it did, but I don't want it to group by active. I want to group by assignment group and see what is actually going on. So I can go an extra layer and see, okay, everything's going to be active because the data source is all active, so that may not be a relevant way of looking at it. But if you want to look at what's the affected CIs by this P1 issues, this is a good way for you to stack it or kind of like break down your report into a little bit more. In the meantime, we'll just keep it as is. So now we have this in different views. So I have some empty records, and we can just ignore that because it's part of the box records. But we have here the service desk, the software, hardware, the network. Now it may be a little bit confusing for me, so I can go ahead and change the color palette if I want to, and see how it looks like again. So now we have it in different colors. which is great. So for now, let's go ahead and check on, I can go all the way to the back without affecting my report. And maybe I want to say, well, this is not really the report I want to use it. We want to encourage our report users to put a kind of like an intelligent form or a good report name that it can be easily familiar. So I'm going to go and say incident priority per assignment group. And I can just go next, next, and next. Now, if I want to do extra changes, you can go ahead and do that. But for now, I'll just keep this as is. And I can go ahead and save this report. So that's one of the value of report sources. And it kind of helps the team out, you know, have a reusable way of providing condition. It's predefined, it's reusable. It makes us available to present it to the team so that they don't have to kind of like formulate conditions all the time, which is commonly a challenge for somebody who is not really familiar with ServiceNow. We have a question in the panel and they're asking for a few examples of the classic version. I'll go ahead and do that in after I go through my slides if we have a little bit of time. All right, so for group by, what this is doing is, basically what it's doing is, we gave an example on this earlier, where we want to make sure that when we present the data, we can go ahead and just use this field in order to group reports. So it's easy for the team to actually see. There's a visual indicator. You can do this in pretty much a lot of the reports. List is an example of something that I commonly use group by. And then you can go an extra layer by configuring additional group bys. So, and this is something I want to point out is also available in the classic version. So, which is actually awesome. So in this case, we were talking about affected CI earlier. And why don't we go ahead and add that as an additional step of grouping the data. Another thing I want to do is probably see if there's any, okay, let's try to see by urgency. So we can group by urgency also. Now, I'm going to come back to this also later down the road, because this group by is going to be very powerful if as part of your best practice in order to avoid transaction overhead. So that, you know, as you run more complex report, think of it as ServiceNow trying to churn all this data for you and present it in a nice view. And if you have different reports in your, for example, dashboard, you can limit or kind of prevent very much transaction overhead on your instance by leveraging this additional group by functionality. So let's go ahead and do that. And if you notice down here, it's a little bit small, but down here in my screen, you're actually going to see assignment group, and I can change it by affected CI, and I can change it by urgency. So from one view, and I will point it out how it looks like in the dashboard, from one view or from one report, you can actually change the visibility of it. You don't have to create 3 reports, you just had one, right? So it's a very useful, and it saves you a lot of time. So let's go ahead and save this record. Now, drilling down, this is a functionality that is, I'll point out, available to the new version. And what this is doing is it allows the reporting users to view subsets of the report data. So if you want them to drill down, you can do that. I mean, if group by won't be sufficient, or you just want to be creative, that's another way of allowing the user that when they click the data set of your report, it will bring them down to another type of report, maybe also at a different kind of report. Together with that is what we call data set. Now, for data set, this actually requires a PA premium. And what it's doing is data set compares two separate tables, such as the number of incidents created versus the number of change created at a given time. And you can use data sets for that. For my demo, I'm going to be focusing on the drill down. And let me go here. I'm going to show you a finished product, but then I'll also show you a sample of, or how to do it yourself. So this one is in, let me change scope because I built this in HR application. So this specific drill down report is about the number of HR cases by topic category. So this is, you know, topic categories are aligned on the HR and their COEs. For those of you who are not familiar with the HR platform and you're curious about it, you want to learn more, you definitely want to go to docs for that. And in this case, you're going to notice the topics are familiar, I'm pretty sure, since the team has HR. You're going to see, just give me one moment. I'm going to move this to my doc. Okay, there you go. So you're going to see here the benefits, performance, HR system support, payroll, and all these other basically HR case topics. Down up here on this created report, you're seeing a badge counter. This badge counter is telling you that you actually have one drill down report. And what this is doing is that when you click on a certain section of the report, it will present a different view. And let's go ahead and do that. So in this case, when I clicked on any part of the data set, it brought me to a breakdown of active HR cases where it's presented to me by assignment group. So this is a breakdown of all those topic categories, but in a assignment group view. The lowest form of drill down that you can get is actually a list. So when I click here and I don't have anything else to drill down to, then it will finally present me the list. All right, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's try it in our incidents, the one we just created right now. And from this view, I'm going to go ahead and see here. Oh, if you notice, I can't edit this. It's because I changed the scope. So that's another thing to be mindful of. If you're saying, oh, I was able to do it, now I can't, and you're an admin, it's probably because, you know, you change your scope. So be mindful of little things like that. It can be a little bit mind-boggling at times. So let's go ahead and create a drill down. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and create a drill down. And if you notice, the source type is still the same. Yes, it's still data source. And then the data source, I cannot change it. It's still the same incidents. So let's go ahead and drill down to, I'll just use incidents by assigned to. Hopefully we can get some good data on that one. So from here, we actually can see, again, different types of reports. So in here, this bars, this histogram, you can definitely want to show it. In this case, I want to be a little, I'm going to use a donut. Donut sounds good right now. So, and then I'm going to go ahead and click next. So now we're seeing assigned to, and then I want it to group by, be mindful of that, active, assigned to, and then we'll just do next. And now it's broken down. Now you can go and take an extra step here. One of the things I want to do is I want to make it easier for me to identify what the data is. I mean, this is nice, it's colorful, but what exactly does this section mean? And I won't know until I kind of put my mouse over it. And if I don't want to, I can go ahead and choose this option, display data labels. And what it's doing is down here is it's actually giving you the quantity and the percentage in this specific donut. Like, so for Beth Anglin, she is 17.5% of 100% in terms of assigned to. Just be mindful when you use this function, because if you're, for example, if you're presenting the CMDB and you have massive CMDB and you start to click display data labels, this can get really crazy over here and a lot of it. So be mindful of those things. So let me go ahead and run it. If you notice, it also displays it. And then from here, I can go ahead and save the drill down. Now we have 2 drill downs. So, or now we have another drill down. So that's an example of something that you can do with drill downs. So let me go back to my slide. And while I'm, let me go and somebody asked a question, what does it mean to change the scope? Please clarify. So what scope is it's basically, think of it as ServiceNow is a building with different rooms. And to say this is a scope application is to say something like this is part of, let's say, in that building, you have a kitchen. All of these utensils, like for example, cooking pots, these knives, they all belong in the kitchen. So think of it in the sense of a house or a building with different rooms. What scoping means is that some specific code needs to live into that room only. Or in this case, it was only HR. So it can only be visible, some data sets, some functionality, some code, some security measures may or may not only be visible in that specific room, in this case, HR. But there are some situations where it can cross different rooms. So for example, a specific code can be used in all these different rooms. You just need to let it get into that room, let it enter into that, for example, scope. So again, if you are interested more into this, go and sign up for a developer instance at developer.servicenow.com. You should be able to, they have a very robust training material there if you want to learn more about building scope applications. All right, so going back to my slide, DotWalking. So DotWalking is a kind of report data in fields. If you want to be able to report data in fields in a related table, DotWalking is the way to go. In this particular example, I'm going to switch to the classic view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run a simple list view. And I'll explain DotWalking. So over here, we mentioned this is grouped by assignment group. That's the reason why you're seeing this list grouped in that section. If I go ahead and remove my grouping and run it again, you're gonna notice it's broken down now, and it's arranged by number. So from here, what you can do is you can actually go ahead and add additional data in here. First, let's go ahead and say, I want to determine, well, let's change our parameters here. It's only querying priority is critical. Let's remove this criteria and let's build a report where I want to know if there is any problem is not empty. And let's see if something comes up. So in this case, I'm going into the incident record. Let me open this in another window. I'm going into the incident record. What we're telling the report to do is go into the related records and find if there's any value in problem. So it gave me this result, but for some reason, I'm not seeing any problem in here. So let's go ahead. Oh, it's because of my query. So let me go ahead and change this to is not empty, because that's what I want, and see if we find something. This is great. Now let's validate that. Now we see a record that has a problem record in it. So in here, if you notice, when I clicked on the information icon, I actually can see additional data about this report. Now, if we want to use this additional data within this record, you can actually go ahead and DotWalk into problem. So let's go ahead and do that one. So problem is not empty. And what we want is to find out if, oops, before we do that, because it's a related table, it's a reference, we're gonna click show all first, show related fields. And from here, we're gonna type problem. And then you start seeing that arrow, then that means that you're going into that problem record now to find any fields in there. So in here, you can also go ahead and start typing now if you want the priority is only high. And from here, you can go ahead and run it. So now we have one record. So this is an example of DotWalking. And if you want to show that in your list view also, you can definitely do that. When you see that plus icon, just click on the plus. It will show you all the fields that you can pull out of that and put into the selected field over here. So that makes it easier for you. For example, if you want to show their location or their manager or something, you can definitely do that, drop it here, and arrange it as part of your report. And I agree. So with regards to that, somebody made a comment, the new UI is way more better when it comes to DotWalking. I totally agree with that. And for those people who don't have the new UI yet for reporting, I want to make sure that you guys understand that this is still there, even though you don't have the new version. So if we go ahead and create a new version of this report, so incident, I say incidents with high problems, problem records. We'll just call it that. If I want to create a new version of it, I can go ahead and click insert and stay. And what it'll do is it'll create a copy of the report. It will not override whatever report I did already, and it lets me go ahead and still stay on this record. So this is one good way for the team to actually DotWalk into a record, and just be mindful of DotWalking when you keep on diving into more related tables or more related records within the related records within the related records. For example, I want to see if this record has a problem and it's high, and also want to see if the caller is a VIP on XYZ location in XYZ country. When you start going, complex as that, you may experience some transaction overhead. So be mindful when you do that one. Okay, so related lists. So connecting different tables in the same report. So what related list is doing is, this is actually similar to database views. And for the longest time, I've been dealing with database views in my, in the work I've done. And the advantage of this related list that is part of the new UI is that it makes it easier for a user to join two tables together. So in this case, I've actually created a related list. Let me check on that one real quick. And for that specific related list, you can actually go ahead and build two reports together. So let's go ahead and do that since I can't find my report. So from here, when you create a new report, you can go ahead and let's say incident and problem. In this case, I want to just focus on a data source for now. And actually, let me go ahead so that there's more data. I will go ahead and look for incident. And then I can go ahead and run. And then I can go ahead and build additional conditions now. So from here, I can say problem and from here I can go ahead and either run this and sorry, that is not good. Let me go ahead and use here. that one out. I can say active is true. I want to see if there's a related problem also. And this is how you actually .walk in the new version, is when you go ahead and use it from here. So in this particular set, you can actually find additional, .walking too. It makes it easier, as what the one of our participants has pointed out. It makes it easier for you to actually .walk into additional data. So I'll just go ahead. Description is actually bad. Let's look at, I'll just do active history also. So for specific situation, oh, okay. So we have a suggestion. Incident and problem. Sorry. Struggling on my related list condition. I was using it for HR, but let me come back to that once I find my report. But the related list is a way for the team to actually use database views. Rather than the original database views can be a little bit tricky. For example, when we go to database views here, if you don't understand how to write code from this view, you may be challenged when you start building your relationship. That's why the related list is actually a little bit much better. So for this particular section, I would rather go and build my database views from the new view rather than going into database views application and then trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to join project task to requested items? Try to join them first using the related list view. So for metrics, this is actually, I would say it's a little bit advanced. So for metrics, there's actually a section in here. And a good reference also is the docs. When you go into metrics, what metrics does is that it allows you to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of your service management processes. So for example, if you want to calculate the duration of how long it took a case to get resolved, so from start to finish, you can use metrics for that. How long it took for, let's say, a problem to be assigned to an assignment group, you can use the metric definition. And I'm not going to really jump into this. There are a lot of out-of-the-box metric definitions already created by ServiceNow. Take the time to review these that are available. And, it will help you also identify, if, for example, a common thing I see in the community when I look at questions over there is assigned to duration is one common example. Incident state duration, how long did it transition from state to state is another question. So that's pretty much on the on metrics. For imported data, this is also part of PA Premium. This basically allows you to import an Excel spreadsheet that is not maintained in ServiceNow and create reports out of those. There are some limitations around it, and if you want to know more, please take time to go to docs. In this slide, I actually added a hyperlink to it, but take time to go to docs to understand what are the limitations around imported data. So is it gonna be there forever? Your reports can be deleted, and there are some file size restrictions, those kinds of things. So distribution is fairly, I would say, easy. There's different ways for you to share your reports. We've been building a couple of reports earlier. And as we were building the reports, I haven't really taken the time to click on the share functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and pick one here. I'll use this one. So for the sharing capability, what it is that it allows you to allow other users to access the report that you built. you have a lot of different options to do that. You can either just go ahead and share it to them by using your dashboard. You can share it to just a group so that when they go into reports and click view run, it will show up in the group reports over there. You can share it to only specific users. And then you can also share it by scheduling this report to be sent out a specific time frame. I mentioned adding it to a dashboard. You can also export it to a PDF, and then finally you can publish it. So I'll cover first share online or publish. So pretty much when you share this online, and I want to make this report available to a specific, not user, I can go ahead and make this available to, let's say, HR admin. I can go ahead and do that. Be mindful though about this functionality. If you're not an admin in your organization, you're only going to be able to see the groups you are a member of. So if you're not seeing any groups, there's probably because you're not a member of a group that can be shared data to, or it's a security group, or for some reason they just gave you a role but not assigned you to a group, which they should be doing. But another way is you can share it to everyone. Now this functionality, this everyone, is limited to a specific report role in ServiceNow. It's not, this everyone functionality is not something you should use lightly, because once you start sharing your reports to everyone all the time, and you're not being mindful of it, you're going to see this global list over here really start to go crazy and grow so much. So it can get really cluttered. It'll be very difficult to find duplicate reports. It will be very time consuming for your employees to look for the report that they want. So be mindful when you use global or sharing to everyone. Now, when you, for example, let's go back here. And from here, you can go ahead and use publish. When you publish this report, what it's doing is it's creating a hyperlink over here, which you can then copy and then send that hyperlink to the consumer or the person who wants to view the report. Be mindful though that there is still a security measure around it. They will still need to have access to ServiceNow and log in. If they click on the details of the report, they may not be able to if they don't have access to additional access into the platform. So be mindful when you use this functionality. And if you want to unpublish it, you can go ahead and just do that, unpublish. And then also we can use it by dashboard or email. So I'll do the email first. So when you do schedule and you have this may or may not be something you are capable of doing again in your organization, you need another role for this. So if you cannot schedule, then you need to schedule a report to be sent out, you may have to ask it from your administrator. So from this view, you can actually, this is going to be the name, like a familiar name, a friendly name for the report. What is the report you want to share or send out by email? Who will be the recipients? If they prefer, if you can also send it to an actual email address if you need to. And then for groups, you can pick any group in here that is in ServiceNow. And finally, you can put the subject. And if you want it to run in a specific time and day, you can do that. You just have to build additional conditions here. One other thing you may want to find value on is this checkbox, omit if no records, so that it doesn't fire a notification to the recipients if your report doesn't have any updated data to it, or it's just empty. So that will save them having to deal with spam. And then down here, you can have the type, is it PDF, Excel, XLS? So there's different options of you to share it. Now, for adding to dashboard, you have the capability to either add it in a home page or, in this case, a dashboard. I prefer dashboard. Let me switch to a HR, or sorry, an IT report. Let's go ahead and use this one. Now let's say I want to be able to add it into a dashboard. I can go ahead and do that by clicking on Add to Dashboard. I can pick the dashboard I want to add it to. And in this case, I'm using a NITIL homepage, and I actually have 2 tabs in that dashboard, and I'm going to jump into that real quick after this. So I want to add it in the My Work. So I'll go ahead and do that one. So when what you can expect it to happen is, what I'm waiting for the system to do is actually go ahead and update it. This is the updated dashboard also. And from here, I can go ahead and either share this dashboard to other groups or members, or if before doing that, if you want to rearrange first your widgets or add additional reports to it, you can actually do this. I find this too big, so let me go ahead and change the size of this. Maybe I don't need it there because I'm more concerned about my work more than anything, and my group's work. So I can go ahead and rearrange it, and then from there, add additional more reports or whatnot, or I could just go ahead and close it and it's good to go. So that's easier now to actually share real reports. You don't have to publish it, or you don't have to create a report in their behalf. And so there's one team can have one view of the same dashboard, the same data. That way there is a single source of truth. All right, so let me go over very quickly, some additional features in Kingston. We have metric base, which is a new functionality. I added a plus sign because you're going to have to reach out to your account executives if you want this functionality. It may or may not be available right away for you. So basically what it is like a pretty version or a much better UI version of the metrics. Step line type report. Basically what it is just another type of report where it looks like a ladder. I guess it's the best way I could describe it. Oh, let me go back there to view run. And basically what it is just really gives you a guideline as to the value of one or more items that's changed over time. Okay, so it's basically when you go to type, and down here, this is the new type of report, which is step line. And so if you want to do some sort of, well, this is poor data. Usually I do it for week over week, kind of like a trending is when I use step line. The on-click behavior, what this is if you want to redirect the user to a URL rather than to the configured drill down list, configured drill down or the list, you can actually do that. So for example, you're doing a presentation online and you tell the users, hey, you can actually check this report. And when they try to click the data, instead of drilling down into the data, it will bring them to, for example, a knowledge article explaining, for example, the report is about states per assignment group or whatever, then you can bring them to a knowledge article and tell them, hey, this is, where you can find more information about state definitions. So that's one of the things that has been improved or has been added into Kingston. And then there are a little bit more, but one thing I'm going to focus on is the admin console. Now this may or may not be available for non-PA users, so be mindful of that. So for this admin console, what it's doing is it just gives you the capacity to run your reports, or is it kind of like a usage report? I may not have some good data in here, but when you use this admin console, it gives you an overview of how reports are used in a ServiceNow instance, or if you're, domain separated, it also shows you. But you can also leverage report statistics. So report statistics, it tells you the name of the report, when it was last run, how many times it's been run so far, the runs on the page, like a homepage, the recent runtime, and then the runtime. These are the things, and as I switch over to the next slide, this runtime, recent runtime that you're seeing are the important factors in order for you to determine if you have been receiving reports of slow instances. It's probably because some people have jammed 25 reports in a dashboard and they want it to refresh every 5 minutes. Most likely you're going to see a high value here. Also, so you got to be mindful of those, you know, take some time to, the very first part on the best practices I've defined is on define a report management process. You know when you're going to allow people to create reports and what type of reports. Have them opt for a dashboard rather than emailing, because your data is always good as your last if you do an email. Same with PDF exports. Know what role you can or and should assign. So if you're not familiar with reporting roles, just go to the role table under the user administration and just do a search on the report. And these are the roles and the definition. So know when you should give which role, because they need to know that with the power that you give them, they gotta be responsible. So with that being said, I'm gonna close up. I'll just put the slide up for references. And if there's any question from the team, feel free to go ahead and just ask. All right, so I'll start off first with navigating between scopes. So it's pretty much easy if you are an administrator. You want to make sure that you have that developer functionality, and you can navigate scopes by going under developer once you've clicked the cog icon, and then just you can change scopes from here. All right. Go ahead, and unrelated to the webinar, notice the label for priority on the pop-out window was highlighted in red, the entire field, not just the text. Any insight on how to accomplish something we've struggled with for some time now? Well, you know what? If you noticed it, it's actually a styling on that field. If you go into, if you actually go into that table and you right click and configure and configure all. So let me just jump into that real quick. And if you still have an issue, just feel free to email Shruti, and I'm pretty sure we can help you answer that, or post a question in the community. So it's actually a styling guide that they have defined for problem. So here are the styles, and it tells you when it should color what field name. All right, so I see that the new UI is more end user friendly. What about professional report developers? What report UI you would recommend to use by a report developer? Well, definitely, I'm a report developer, and I always go for what makes it easier for me and something that I can teach other people to use. So I will definitely go with the new. No, I would definitely go with the new. So it's like, you know, you'd rather go to a smartphone than a flip phone. All right, any chance to get a copy of your slide so we can go to those links? Shruti, you have a response to that?
So basically this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the recording at a later point. But if there was any hyperlinks, yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, the hyperlinks are here, so you'll see it.
Yeah, you'll be able to see it.
All right. Will you share this recording? Yep, we will. We are not in Kingston yet, and my main report writer was unable to attend this call. Okay. Well, we are recording it, and we will definitely be sharing it. So other than that, any other report related questions? Anybody? Going once, going twice. All right, I'll pass it on to you, Shruti. Thanks everybody for listening to me.
Okay, thank you, Darla. That was a great webinar, very informative. And thank you, everybody else, for attending as well. Okay, there's looks like there's one last question. How many drill downs can you do up to?
At this point, there's actually no limit. So I would go, be mindful though, because it's like, I think too much of anything is bad. I would go advise limited to 3, and then the last would be the report. But I'll leave it up to your discretion.
Okay, thank you, Darla. So I think that was pretty much the last question. And thank you, everybody, for attending. And we will send you out the link to the recording. And thank you so much, Darla. And see you, everybody, next